The launch pad concept is simply that what happens during the year that I see all the time, and the parents, of course, experience, the whole family experiences, is things get misplaced, things get lost, people can't find stuff, then they get late, then there's rushing, and it's sort of the same scenario that we just talked about. So instead, what would be great is if the kid, especially during the summertime, right? Because this is a summer discussion, could start to practice planning for the next day, maybe the night before.
Welcome to Real Talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches, where we discuss all aspects of parenting using the foundation of understanding personality dynamics to raise independent, responsible, and resilient children. My name is Karen Wagner, founder of Teaching Our Youth and the Parenting Blueprint. Let's dig right in with today's topic and have some real talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches. So if you're a parent of a neurodiverse child, you know that change and transition can come with a little bit of challenge, especially when we are entering into a new school year. I am so excited to bring to you today Jared Kallen, who is a parenting blueprint coach and a neurodiverse specialist, who will actually going to talk us through some of the things that we need to do in reference to being prepped and not stressed, and a fresh start for your neurodiverse child as we enter into the school year. So, Jared, I am so happy to have you here. I know with a lot of the families that I speak to and a lot of things that I see on social media, there are a lot of parents that really struggle with how do I need to adapt and provide an environment for my child to be successful, not only socially, but academically as well. And so I'm really looking forward to how we can help parents through this talk today in bringing a way that we can help them with some of that anxiety and overwhelm that they may be feeling as they're preparing for this transition to a new school year. So they're not necessarily living in survival, but they actually have an action plan that we're going to go through this. And because of your specialty working in this and now bringing in the parenting blueprint model for your parents to work with, I just think this is the perfect time to set up this topic. And so a couple of things that, well, if you would you kind of maybe share a little bit about having now just completed your certification and bringing the parenting blueprint into your coaching model? Why did you feel it was so important to bring something in for your parents?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for having me on. Basically, what I found over lots of years of coaching, mostly neurodivergent, ADHD, ADD, autistic families and kids, is there tends to be a lot of conflict in the home for one reason or another. And a lot of it makes sense, especially when we're talking about DIS, because usually, not always, but often a lot of my clients, ADHD, ADD, et cetera, are pretty dominant. That's a pretty high percentage. So if you have a dominant child, for example, and then you have a cautious mom or something, they're going to clash potentially unless you have tools like this to sort of get them a little bit more on the same page, get them a little more united, get them sort of like they both have a little more of a hand in what's going on, more agency, both of them, not just the mom and not just the kid, let's say, but they've sort of through dialogue or practice or modeling or something, they figured out, okay, maybe last year didn't work so well, we fought too much or something like that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to sort of pare down, and I'm going to tell you sort of my top three priorities. You tell me yours, and let's figure out how we can sort of make this work, moving forward.
Right. And understanding where the parent is coming from, because your past model, you did work a lot predominantly with the student and a little bit with the parents. But from our previous conversations, if you're spending time working with that student, but the parents don't understand not just what you're doing with the student, but why you're doing what you're doing with that student.
Right.
I can see where there may be a regression rather than a progression, right?
Yes.
And so you're now coming in and taking a holistic approach and looking at the whole family dynamic.
Right.
Not only supporting the student with your coaching, but also supporting the family to better support the student with your coaching. And I love this. I really feel that this is going to be a transformative model for parents who really love and care about their kids, but also if you, as you said, are tired of living in the conflict and the fight to get anything done, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Right.
So when we look at the neurodiverse student or the child,
Mhm,
there is a level of structure and predictability and a little bit of flexibility that really is key for these kids.
mhm.
So share a little bit more about how you work with that in being able to change that mindset, I guess, of the student for the things that are really important with this predictability and structure and routine.
First of all, most kids or young people, they don't want what you just mentioned. They don't want, they don't naturally flock to structure or consistency or whatever. So that's where handling or coaching the parent could have a lot of benefits because it's really a meeting of minds or a meeting of something, that where it's going to work. But to give you a perfect example, during the school year, there are many examples of when the whole family is sort of in rush and stress mode, and often it has to do with like mornings, getting out in the mornings. One thing that a lot of kids either cannot do or refuse to do is get themselves up by themselves in the morning. So then you already have conflict because mom's knocking on the door and he's sleeping or whatever, right? And then it extends further because then if he's really late, then everyone else will be late. His sister, his mom, his dad, job will be late. Everything will be late. It's sort of like a not a good show. So instead, one thing we might work on, amongst many other things, is talk or have your kid coached on how he will get up by himself or what has been an obstacle in the past.
Mm.
I've had kids who say, when I hear that they're not getting up and mom's complaining or something, I'll say, "Don't you have an alarm?" They say, "Of course I have an alarm." And the second it goes off, I turn it off and I go back to bed. Okay, so then we say, okay, well, if that's what's happening, then you can do that. But then you better have two other alarms way across the other side of your room. But you have to
Right.
get up and get out of bed, and then realize, oh, I'm alive, and I have to go to school, and someone's waiting for me. So you might have a three alarm situation when you have one. That's just one. There's all sorts of tips and tricks, but that's one where because you wouldn't believe how many kids will say, "Oh yeah, actually they might say, well, that won't do it either because I'll go across the room, shut that off, and go back into bed." Then we have to figure out something more drastic. But to the point of where the parents come in sometimes is how did we get there? We got there through, for lack of a better word, parents enabling their kids, meaning they would set the alarm or they'd say, forget the alarm. I'm going to knock on the door. When you hear the knock, get up. And then the conflict will start because the kid's not getting up. Right. And so the mom or dad or somebody, the guardian, would have to say, this is not cool. We're not going to keep doing this dynamic. So they could give the kid agency or try it. They could say, "What is your plan to get yourself up by yourself in the morning?" And then right after that, please carry it out and prove that you can do it. Because the enabling stuff is very sort of destructive towards the kid's sense of self esteem, but also executive functioning. Because if the mom, I mean, it's almost makes complete sense, right? If the mom is always knocking on the door and no alarms or other systems are being used by a 16-year-old kid, then she is acting as his brain and she is the executive functioning center.
That's
That's not good.
powerful. That is powerful. She is acting. The parent is acting as the brain because the child is not engaging in what needs to be done. I love that free alarm get up.
Yeah, but
I
to
had
take that,
one that was really rough in the morning. I mean, it
yeah,
just was not a morning person, just wasn't. And it was not optional. As you said, we were carpooling, we
right,
had the kids, like we've got to
right,
find a better way.
right,
And then it was like, then you shower at night and then you get up and just brush your teeth and get out the door, like whatever it takes. But we did need to find what was going to work, that it wasn't me, like
yeah,
you said, creating the morning in a
right,
conflict. Starting the morning,
right,
I don't want to do it. They want to do it. It
no,
sets a tone for everybody.
right,
And that
absolutely, yeah.
nobody wants to live in that.
And just to this point, this is not to bash parents
Right.
because the reason the parents were doing all that stuff, the enabling, et cetera, the knocking on the door, the not insisting on an alarm system or something, is because they have to get on, as to your point, with the show.
Right.
So sometimes it's very innocent. The mother will first maybe or father ask, get up or do some task, right? And then when after the fifth time, like, screw it, I got to do it because we've got to get rolling.
Right.
You know, that's life. That's
Right.
life.
Yeah.
But the key to any of these things that we're talking about is that when anyone is prompted and they have executive functioning issues, then it's a law. It's a lose. It's a loss because they're not learning how to problem solve or think through things or plan in advance or self-advocate or anything if they're always being prompted by an adult or by me
Right.
or any. And so that's sort of the hand up that has to happen that, I'm not going to remind you, figure it out.
Right.
Say it, you can say it lovingly, you can say it firmly. I don't care, but it's just got to be said.
Right. The boundaries
That
need
makes
to be
sense.
set. We call that the helicopter parenting, right?
Yeah. Well,
Either
yeah.
saving them, or you can be really dictatorial where you're trying to control it and you end up in the fight. So
Yeah.
neither one of those are effective, nor are they teaching the child life skills of how to be responsible for themselves. So we talk about small but powerful routines for
Yes.
neurodiverse
Yeah.
kids. And you've got
Yes.
a couple of ideas that we talked about even before we
Yeah.
jumped on live about the launch pad, that you have.
Yes.
So explain
Yeah.
a little bit about how you use this particular framework with your
Yeah,
families.
sure, absolutely. So the launchpad concept is simply that what happens during the year that I see all the time, and the parents, of course, experience, the whole family experiences, is things get misplaced, things get lost, people can't find stuff, then they get late, then there's rushing, and it's sort of the same scenario that we just talked about. So instead, what would be great is if the kid, especially during the summertime, right? Because this is a summer discussion, could start to practice
Yeah.
planning for the next day, maybe the night before.
Right.
So let's just say the kid, all the kid has to do is be ready for summer camp at 8 a.m. the next morning. Well, then all he or she has to ask him or herself is, what do I need? Are we swimming? Do I need a swimsuit? Do I need other equipment, athletic gear, socks, sneakers, towels, whatever? Very basic stuff.
Right.
But if it's thought through a little bit and just for 2 minutes the night before with a checklist, it's good to have concrete stuff in front of them. Check, check, check. Okay, good. It's in the bag. Good. Now I'm putting the bag near the front door, and then I'll pick it up as I zip out. You know, so it's sort and the same thing. It's really practice, right? Because during the school year, they have so many other things to worry about, like all the academics. Where did I put my research paper? Am I ready for the test? Like that. You get that stress thing.
Right.
But all I'm suggesting is if any parents wanted to start now with, do you know where your stuff is? Can you use a checklist just for the basics? Not We're not even talking about, do you have all your academic books in your backpack
Right.
and is it all organized? Like, which is something we would focus on during the year or the fall. But it's more like, just, do you know where your socks are? Can you find them? Can you? Some kids cannot find their socks for some reason. And the worst case scenario, the family
Yes.
writ large goes on a sock hunt. That's not
Right.
good,
I know.
right?
Everything stops to
Everything
find the
stops. I can't
missing
find my
object.
socks. Where are the socks? I'm right. I'm late. You know, and he's worried about his friends, which is fine too, but he needs his socks first.
Yeah. So starting with this launch pad
Yeah.
or checklist, even
Yes.
right now, what you're saying is we can start with some simple things. And as we get into the academic year, maybe
Yes.
we're adding things to that, but we are creating this pattern of having this checklist of preparation before we even get to the next day. And
Yeah.
and I did have a son that I don't think he was neurodiverse. I understood his personality. He was I and he was S. He wasn't task driven. He's inspiring and
Yeah.
supportive, very relational. Relationships were important. Getting it organized was not. And
Right.
we had a lot of those mornings of missing things. And
Right.
we did have to make a list of doing it the night before so
Yeah.
that it is there where it needs to be. The same thing with homework. He was good about doing his homework. He was a conscientious student, but where it went after that, I don't know.
Right.
Maybe it's in my math book, or maybe it's in this book. And I'm like, why isn't it in the book where it belongs? So
Right.
we needed to create a folder that was just homework. All homework goes in here. Homework comes home,
Right.
homework goes back in the same folder, then you distribute when you get there. But it was about creating those systems and predictable routines that's what we needed to do. And really, my oldest son, who was a little more organized, and the second one was not, okay, then you've got to watch that whole comparison. Why don't you? And
Hmm.
just instead of saying, but this is who you are, how can I help you be the
Yes.
best you can be according to your design, and not making the child feel bad about who they are. And so
Yeah.
they are some real small and powerful routines that we can be doing in advance. You also talked about a couple of other things as kids are preparing to get into college, or maybe even the first couple of weeks. You talked about establishing a communication plan. So talk to the parents a little bit about what that looks like, because some of our parents may be doing that, others may not. But as we
Right.
were talking about this prior to going live, I saw a lot of value in laying that groundwork before we got into the school year.
Absolutely. Yes. So, I mean, I'll just say this from experience: the parents who establish communication and even a communication plan with the powers that be at their respective kids' schools, administrators usually, or it could be a learning specialist, or it could be their career, their counselor, advisor, but somebody who's in a power position to make things happen. And there are those people at every school, public or private, doesn't matter, and colleges and universities. And the whole thing is, you set up an email intro early-ish so you get ahead of the pack and you try to let that person know about your kid's strengths, about their kids' triggers, about effective strategies that have worked in the past, or support systems, really. So a kid who has a 504 and IEP is usually allowed to have time and a half for exams. But if you go to college or universities, that has to be established and documented prior to really getting on campus.
Mhm.
And that's different from high school. High school or middle school, the parents usually control everything. They send the neuropsych report, then the accommodations are administered. In college, since you're older, you're 18, 19, 20, 22, the colleges maybe quite rightly said, you run it now. You bring us the documents. You prove that you qualify for time and a half or arrange seating, or it's not getting done. And that's often and so it's either do you want to be happy or do you want to take your poison? Like there's no in between. Like, and taking your poison would be, I guess, parents not making the kid aware that's going to be a different show. Let's say if they're going to the freshman year of college, that they have to take more control of the situation and provide some documentation, or maybe meet with the advisor. And, because sometimes the advisor has to ask a series of questions, very cursory, but like, is this true? Is this true? Is this true? I'm checking. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And
Right.
then after that happens, an email goes out to all of his professors. And the same thing in high school. The email
Wow.
goes out to all the teachers. Just
Right.
want to make you aware that Jim
Right.
needs time and a half for every major exams. He cannot have more than one exam per day per the rules. And really, we need to find seating in the front row for him
Mhm.
in every class.
So this is helping parents be proactive. And what you're saying is, let's do this before school
Yeah.
starts. Because when
Yes.
school starts and all the kids come in and teachers are overwhelmed with all that's very difficult. If they have time, even a couple weeks even before, know the student is
Yep.
coming and make those accommodations, then they are already prepared and know how to receive that student when they come there. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And also just logistically, right now, half the administrators, the school people of the world are not in the school systems at all. They're on summer vacation or
Right.
something. So
Yeah.
so whenever they return to their job,
Right.
they'll have a host of emails. And I would hope that whatever parent we're dealing with or coaching or whatever has an email right there that's clear. My kid's coming, freshman. We have a neuropsych report. Here it is, or my son will bring it to you. What's the protocol? How can we protect my kid? How can he get everything he wants? I will wait for your reply, or should we jump on a call? Whatever.
Right. Being
It's really just
proactive.
making the connection.
I love that. I love that. And Jared, now, having just completed the parenting blueprint certification and using this tool of understanding different personalities, how is understanding the child's personality shape a smoother transition for that school experience for the parents? Because having being a mom and stepmom to seven and knowing that they were
Yeah.
also different, I know that there were what I want to call quirky things and behaviors within my kids that at first used to frustrate me, and I tried to get them to conform to my way of thinking.
Right.
And once I understood the personalities and going through the assessment and using the data tools that we use, it became clear to me that there was really nothing seriously wrong with my child or me. We just saw life differently. So,
Yeah.
having gone through this, how is understanding the personalities shape a smoother understanding for your families as you move forward with your program?
Yeah. So basically, what happens is with all the stuff we just talked about, like getting prepared, possibly the kids going to college, he or she will have to take much more control of the situation
Yeah.
because it's age appropriate, and developmentally appropriate. But the main thing is the problem is that many of the neurodivergents will say no to that. Mom and dad might say, you need to get this done. We don't want to hear, in mid-September that you're not getting your accommodations. You don't have time and a half. You're not hearing stuff in the classroom because you're not in the front row or you're fooling around too much, whatever it is. Right. So if the kid says no like that, and it's a hard no often, then what do you do? And that's where the disc training and dealing with parents and the kids and the personality style differences will come into play because especially during the summer, knowing what's coming down the pike, you
Mhm.
can start to have a meeting of the minds, like we discussed. You take a dominant, let's say 18-year-old, and a, let's say, cautious 54-year-old mom. Okay, there's going to be some differences,
Yeah.
and you can relate to this. And so then we have then, for example, I'll just take an example right out of disc. If you take a dominant ADHD 18-year-old kid about to go to college, and he's told to like meet with the resource center and all the stuff that we just talked about, he might say no, and he also might add, and don't tell me what to do, and don't order me around. Okay, he wants control. He
Yeah.
wants, he wants more fun than organization right now. He doesn't want to look into even a day ahead. So why is mom bugging me about a month and a half ahead, right? And then the mom, if she gets that response, would have a mini or a big freak out because she's like, I'm not getting anywhere. And then of course you have catastrophizing, like, he's not going to be ready. Something bad's going to happen. And so all the stuff that you have taught me and that is important is going to be melding these two different personality types to get to some sort of consensus about how it's going to go. So the conflict would hopefully come down, production would go up, execution would go up, and general happiness would go up. There'd be more time to have fun and get things done, like my tagline says. Just,
Yeah.
you have to. It sounds bad, but you have to sometimes sell stuff, especially to these neurodivergent kids, because they don't. And this is true. It's proven. The data shows this. They don't have a concept of time, nor do they want one.
Mhm.
Right. So if you know any good coach or any good therapist, if they're dealing with a neurodivergent, they don't say, let's revisit something in 3 months or you'll get something in 3 months. It's going to be like, by the end of this week, if you've
Right.
done X, you're getting Y,
Right.
whatever Y is.
Right.
It's right. It's front and center.
Yes. Yeah. It is a powerful tool. So one more thing I just kind of want to tap into.
Yeah.
What are things that you would tell parents to not overlook? Sometimes there are things that we may take for granted, but what are some things that they may take for granted, but that is really important to not overlook in preparing them
Yeah.
emotionally and mentally for a new school year? I know you've got a lot of experience, and I think some of it comes from our perspective that they should know, or we assume they should know, and then it implodes on itself. So, are there some things based on your experience and the clients you've worked with in the past that parents should don't overlook this because this really is an important foundation to build on for success?
Sort of what we talked about just prior. It's basically that let's just assume, and this is, I recommend this for every family, that they have some sort of mini family contract. It shouldn't be long. It should be brief, very very detailed, very concrete, such as, homework is done first. Then you get to play on video games. Dishwashing has to occur, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday by 9 p.m. These are very, very discrete, concrete tasks. And then anything else. And then, to your point about the question of what should they not overlook, once you have any kind of foundation like that, if anyone is not doing those things, you must be firm and call them on it. Otherwise, there's no power to the
Right.
tool.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no power,
Indeed.
if and I know a lot of parents, and I'm guilty of this too. My kids are grown, but it's the same thing. Like sometimes, you've already established someone else your kid has a responsibility or a chore or a task or just 4 tasks or whatever. Keep it simple. But you might be heading out to dinner. They didn't do it, and you just say, forget about it. And then that obviously creates the potential for a bad pattern,
Yeah.
especially if the kid catches on that his mom or dad's a softie sometimes.
Yes. Now I'm gonna share a
Yeah.
story because I ran into this with my strong-willed, dominant, cautious oldest son, and I got tired of the nagging about the chores to be done. Now I would give them a window, like you're saying, by a certain
Mhm.
time to have things done, and I
Right.
still found as though it wasn't happening, and I wasn't.
Hmm.
There was no real consequence for him.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so there was one weekend, and he's a carnivore, so I was making steak for dinner, and we were all excited. We're going to have the family over for steak dinner, and I said,
Right.
"Feel free to join us for dinner when your chores are done." So
Yes.
dinner time comes, Jared, and the chores are not done. So
Right.
Kyle comes down to sit at the table, and I said to him, "Feel free to join us for dinner when your chores are done."
Right.
And he said, "I'll get to him." And I just said again,
Mhm.
Feel free to join us for dinner when your
Mhm.
chores are done. Now,
Right.
I stayed calm with this because my
Yeah.
heart is racing because I want to
Right.
pop him in the freaking head because we
Right.
already
Right.
had this conversation. All right. Because that's
Yeah.
my personality. All right. Parents, remember, your
Yeah.
personality is going to get triggered and then there's going to be a reaction. Right.
Yeah.
And I said it again. Feel free to join us. Now, everybody at the table, no one knew what to do because you could feel the tension at the table. No
Mhm.
one lifted a
For
fork, no
sure.
one passed the bowl. Everyone just sat there because you
Right.
could see there was a conflict right there. But I
Right.
stayed calm. And he's like, "You're kidding me, right?" And I said,
Mhm.
"No. I
Mhm.
mentioned to you earlier, feel free to join us for dinner when your chores are done." Well, he got up and he slammed that chair and he went
Mhm.
up and I think it was clean the bathroom to go clean the bathroom. And
Mhm.
look, I saved him a plate, but I
Mhm.
had
Yeah.
to say no is no because we were in that cycle of when I said it and then it was the next day and the next day and it's 3 days later and it's still not done. And
Yeah.
like I said, I had to follow through with the I will statement. I will when you. And that was a statement
Right.
that, I use in some of my coaching when you have these
Mhm.
kids who don't feel that your word is valid, or they
Mhm.
want to push or test you, feel free or I will when you. And
Mhm.
you know what? He knew I meant business at that point.
Yeah.
And it was
Absolutely.
very tense and everybody knew, and it wasn't a pleasant meal after that, you know what I mean? But I
Right.
had to
Yeah.
at some point say, no more, not today, it's not happening because
Right.
everybody else did the expectation and he gets the pass.
Right.
And it wasn't okay to
No.
allow him to get the pass because what message was it sending to the other kids that Kyle doesn't have to do it? So why should I have to do it? And now we've just lost all credibility. So, parents, the hardest thing is going to be when you have to follow through, when you don't
Mhm.
want the conflict, but you have to. Or, as you said, you've lost all credibility in anything you say.
Mhm.
Lost all
Yeah, and
credibility.
the only thing I would add to what you just said is, it's not only not good for the other members of the family and the other siblings and the parents, it's not good for that client, that kid,
Right.
because
Yep.
they are skating by when they're not
Hmm.
really supposed to be skating by
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
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 And by the way, this can be applied. We were just talking about, after you do the specific chore that you were talking about, but parents can be creative in applying it to whatever are their priorities within their specific family. Like if mom is sick of smelling the kids' laundry, that becomes the priority.
Right.
You can eat
Exactly.
dinner after I know the laundry
The
is
laundry's done.
walking. I can hear
Exactly.
it. I can hear it. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
and
And
not
that's that
before.
simple, it's that simple phrase, I will when you, it's a simple
Yeah.
phrase, fill in the blank, right? Whatever it is, but
It's
you
just
just got
it's
to follow
right.
through.
And it's the same thing with so sometimes when I start with kids, I tell them if they follow basically the majority of what I suggest. Now I'm not trying to be like an egomaniac or anything. I just say if you follow the majority of what I suggest, like maybe 70%, 80%, and we can see that, in the daily texting, the way you communicate, the way you're clear, the way you're accountable, then, and this is the part with your contingent stuff or conditional stuff, is then your parents are not allowed to nag you. And
Right.
you came on telling me you do not, and they're like, I said, do you like it when your parents nag you? No, I hate it. I hate it. Right. Well, so this is the road to no nagging. It's the
Yes.
road.
I love that.
It's your solution, and you must use it. But many years ago, especially, kids would twist that, and they wouldn't do what they were supposed to do, and then they would say to their mom and dad, "But Jared said you're not allowed to nag me," and I said, "No, no, no, no. It's
Right.
contingent upon you're
Nice
doing
try. Yeah.
whatever you're supposed to be doing." Yeah, and in fact, as sometimes I get a text that almost a slightly angry text, let's say from a mom, Billy says that you said we're not allowed, we have no say in the family. No, I didn't say that at all. Yeah, because the second part of the sentence they never hear, and the second part of the sentence is that they're not allowed to nag, provided you do what you're supposed to do, and
Right.
they can nag the heck out of you if you don't,
If you
because they
don't,
love
right.
you and they support you, and you owe them, and all these reasons, and you're growing up and you're maturing, so like let's get with it. You tell me you can't wash the dishes, you're 18 years old, of course you can.
Yeah, yeah. This is a wonderful approach because now you'll be sharing these same things with the parents as to how to set up the strategies that you're talking to the child about. So everybody is on the same page. So before we wrap, Jared, I want to talk about um, if parents are looking for a coach, because
Yeah.
I believe that there's times, look, our goal with the parenting blueprint is to empower parents with the tools of understanding to connect with their children. But there are going to be times where we need to get some help and some support. And so if a family is feeling as though we've been trying it our way, it's not been working, we've been living in the conflict, Jared, I need another approach. Can you help me? If they need to start to find a coach,
Mhm.
when is the best time to do that? And what should they be looking for? And let's share a little bit about, honestly, what do you provide and how can you help them?
the search for a coach, it's like multifaceted because first of all, something like if the client is going to be, let's say, a teenage female, she may only want a female coach. So
Right.
now you're restricted a little bit, but at least you know, right?
Right.
But in general, speaking generally, you want somebody who you as the parent can vibe with. Like you get them, you see how they think, you see how because often parents when they're interviewing me will give me certain situations like, well, how are you going to motivate the kid, or what's your secret, or whatever. And so the parents will be actively listening to how you'd approach different situations, and there's all sorts of ones. It could be hygiene, it could be too much pot smoking, a lot of things, right? So and then I'll respond, and then they either like it or they don't like it. If they like it, then we move to a free like 15 or 20-minute FaceTime or Google Meet or whatever consultation with the kid, because you want them to buy in too. If they don't buy in, it's sort of a waste.
Right.
And that's where so if the mom and dad vibe and they read my testimonials or whatever, and I vibe with the kid, that's a pretty good, you've covered a lot of bases.
Right.
But in general, coaches should be very flexible in their approaches, instead of just trying the same thing over and over again when it's not working clearly with the kid. So they have, if the mom said tough love always works because he's an athlete, but somehow it's not working, you got to switch gears.
Yeah.
Also, you have to be very available. I'm available, as you know, every day for every client. They're supposed to text me every day with their plan for the day. That's accessibility. Okay.
Mm.
And also, we have to be flexible with our logistics, our time. So a lot of kids have to, something comes up and they have to cancel or reschedule. We have to be flexible. We have to be ready for that. If a mom calls me or a dad calls me and they say, look, we'd love for you to coach our kid, but he's totally weighed down with 3 sports and other extracurriculars, and academics are really important, whatever. I say, fine. Then I can meet with him between 9 and 1 on Saturday or Sunday.
Right.
Yeah. No. And then we can just focus on the week there. We plan the week, we set up the week, we do the scaffolding, we do the chunking of the work. We're on the student portal seeing these big assignments coming up, or we're trying to prioritize. That's all happening during that session, even on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Once they get up and they've had their splash of cold water on their face, so they're actually hearing me.
I've done that approach.
Yeah.
Wake up. This is wonderful, Jared. And so right now is the season as we're heading into the end of summer, heading into fall. For parents who know that this is coming, but
Yeah.
may not want to deal with the conflict, this is the time to start seeking out
Yeah.
and if you've not ever worked with a coach or a coach for your neurodiverse child, I'm telling you, what Jared is doing right now is transformational. Not only for the student, so they are empowered to know that they have what it takes to succeed with just a little bit of guidance and accountability, but also to be able to support you in better understanding why your child does what they do, so that you can provide that same level of support at home. Because if Jared is coaching your child to do all these things, but we are undoing
Right.
Jared is prepared, then we're
Right.
slipping back, and we are not raising that child to become the independent, resourceful young adult that we know they're capable of doing if we can just stick to that structure, routines, and predictability. And so
Right.
I'm just so excited about the potential of what you have to offer your families that are struggling with this right now. And so, any last words or things that maybe we didn't quite cover
Well,
that you'd like to share with the parents?
to your point, the last point that you made is very important because I do feel that some guardians or parents, they hire a coach, any coach, and they say, look, we've been dealing with this crap for 10 years.
Right.
We'll pay you. You take care of it.
Yep.
That usually doesn't work
No.
for the reasons you just provided,
Right.
because I only see them, let's say, an hour a week. Okay. They're with the kid 24/7, 7 days a week. So if they are in any way, let's just say, continuing similar patterns as before I or any coach came on, like enabling, doing the work that the kid should be doing, waking the kid up when the kid should be waking up by himself, reminding him to take a shower when he needs to have a reminder system to, when he smells, he takes a shower, whatever it is. Right. But the thing is, that it's real, and you can understand both sides of the difficulty, because the parent, if they have become very accustomed to helping,
Yeah.
Even and they might even see it as a loving gesture. Yeah, moms and dads help, or I'm helping my kid. Well, there's a fine line when it all of a sudden we're ruining their ability to executive function, think through things, problem solve, remember, not forget, all this kind of stuff. So and the more shocking thing is that occasionally, even though this is very clear in the beginning of the coaching relationship, mom or dad or whoever is saying, we are on board, we won't interfere, we'll follow, okay, a month or two later, you do find out through the kids usually that it's not happening. Like you pull up some great piece of work or the Google Calendar is perfectly filled out. Like, did you do this? I'm saying no. My mom actually helped me quite a bit. And then it can get a little dicey. But
Mm.
as long I would prefer to address it in a professional and gentle manner and just say, could we consider, because it could be threatening to stop that for many parents. You can say, could we consider giving a week or two,
Right.
and then let's revisit it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I meant with flexibility as a coach, which I do, and I think it's very important, is let's say you're coaching an 18-year-old kid. Let's say you have a 4-month contract, but in the first 3 weeks, you don't see nothing seems to be working. Okay. Then in the fourth session, you swap out the kid and you speak to one or both parents for the entire hour and you're just problem solving. What are you seeing in the house? What's he saying about me? Why is he not doing this? Anything. And this is like me being a mini detective, which is critical. You got to get the data. Like what the mom says. Well, he says he doesn't really he feels like you're talking at him and not with him. Well, now that's good data,
Right.
right? Because then I'll watch what I say more carefully, or I'll watch my demeanor or whatever to adjust and customize to that particular kid in that particular family. So it's sort of like and that's pretty important. Or he might say, well, he's not really interested in what you have to offer because he's not going to college and he already decided that. And he's in 11th grade. So why does he need to learn anything? And then now we know. And then you say, but the same kid who says that, they're usually very entrepreneurial. So they're selling sneakers on the sneaker stock market. So then you can say, for a kid who's refusing to write and saying, I'm not writing and you're not going to teach me how to write. Then you say, well, you're going to have to write even if you never go to college and you want to just be an entrepreneur. You're going to have to write a business plan. You're going to have to get capital, and then we forget about all the academics and we're just focusing on the sneaker stock market and just focusing on the mechanics of writing, period. And it works because they're like, all right, this isn't school. This is fun. I love this thing. So
Yes.
you're aligning you're trying to grow the kid, but with what interests the kid only sometimes their passions, their interests, because that fulfills their answer to the why. Why are we even doing
Yes.
this?
Yes, that is so true, and I've often said that, and this was my challenge with Kyle. If he didn't see a purpose in why he needed to learn something, he didn't care to learn it. But if he saw a purpose in it, then it fueled him to conquer it. I mean, like he
Yeah,
wanted to not only do it, but do it well and blow it out of the water. And that
right,
was the drive because it was the challenge that drove him, but not the mediocre, mundane. Why do I,
right.
he didn't care about history. He didn't care, there was just
Yeah,
things he didn't care about. But when you tie it to a life skill as to why this is powerful, then they see it. And that's so powerful and true to be able to do that and to be able to connect those dots for that
yeah,
story.
and I would have one other thing, which is humor is critical
Yeah.
because these are sometimes stressful situations,
I
and that's why I say let's have fun and get things done because sometimes you have to take sort of risks. Like there's one kid who was 18-year-old senior at a nearby really good public school, and he had that problem not waking himself up, nothing, but I also knew that he was very social. And I said, would you ever want anybody you're interested in, like as in a girl, like a date, to know that you can't wake yourself up? And he was like, hell no. And then that was good. That's sort of like, hit them where they are, open
That's
them
the
up. So
sticky
yeah,
right there. Yeah.
that's a little icky. Let's keep that between ourselves and I'll fix it real quick.
Yeah, but it's true. What is the internal motivator and drive? And that's what's so powerful about understanding the personalities, because many times as parents, and I got caught in this too, is when internal emotional needs are not being met, we will experience a disruptive behavior to get that need met. So we want to address the behavior at the surface without changing the interaction to get to the why. And
Right.
so when I offered Kyle choices within my boundaries, then he felt a level of control. If I wanted something to get done, I would tell him he probably couldn't handle it. You know what I
Mm,
mean? It was too hard, it was too difficult.
mhm,
There's no way he'd pull it off. And he'd be
mhm,
like, watch me. Like it was that reverse psychology that I had to use because my way of telling him he did not take directives well was backfiring it. So I
right,
really needed, so that's the power of a parenting blueprint and understanding what
mm,
truly does motivate your child,
mhm,
finding the gap between the way you see life and the way they see life, and
yep,
adapting your interactions and apply the right strategies to help that child be the best they can be according to their design. Jared, I am so
yep,
excited about what you're now going to
me
be
too.
able to bring to your family. Seriously, it is
Yep,
it is the whole package. It is the whole package. The parents are going to have a better understanding. The child is going to feel seen, heard, and understood, not only through your coaching, but the support that you're able to provide the families that will continue that continuity, not just through the season, but for the rest of their life. And this is what we as parents want. We want that legacy relationship that our kids will leave home and know that my parents got me. They
mhm,
understood me, they supported me. And whenever they
mhm,
have a problem in life, that they know that they can come back home and talk to their parents and they won't be criticized and judged because the parents will understand them. This is the power of what we do. I'm telling you, I'm so excited about this. So, all right. So,
yep,
those of you who have a child and you are struggling with neurodiversities, I'm going to be providing the information for Jared for you to connect with him, learn more about his services, jump on a call, talk about what's been going on, and see what Jared can do if you're fit, for what Jared have to offer. I believe that there are so many families who can truly be transformed with what he has to offer. If you found value in this episode, of course, like or subscribe to our channel, share it with others because I know we are not alone. So thank you for joining us for this episode of Real Talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches, and we'll see you on the next time. Take care. Bye.